In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It is written that in the beginning there was no shape or form but a void. The best way that we can personify that void is with water. And in the midst of this void came a divine, mature intelligence that brought forth words. It is written that the words were said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Soon there were other words that came to manifestations, one being the earth to separate the waters. And because we share all of the elements of the earth, we too can call ourselves earth. Greetings and welcome to another step in the journey, another brick in the temple. This is the build. I am partnered here with Brother Eli. I will bring him in as he will begin with our starting announcements, and then we shall dig deeper into the subject matter.
Blessings, Brother Michael, and blessings to everyone who may watch tonight or in the future. The words we are expressing freely are not meant to offend anyone. Our words are not meant to be in any competition with anyone else's wisdom. Your wisdom and understanding is yours alone. We are choosing to remain consecrated while being in a furnace of affliction, the burning bush. Conquering ignorance is essential. Nobody is born wise. A person has to make serious efforts to develop the qualities needed to be able to speak and achieve mayat without falling into the twin traps of vanity and greed. We are choosing to remain vigilant and have a plain tongue, and we are capable of satisfying God because our entire existence rests on knowledge and not on belief. Also, as we know in the ancient Kemetic book of Two Ways, it says that the causes of wrongdoing are ignorance and immaturity. So we hope and pray to mature in a way that we do not cause the waters to move in our essence of being. Thank you, Brother Michael, for the introduction. Unmute, Brother Michael.
Thank you, brother. Though we have made and continue to make preparations to assure the least amount of harm, not just in our daily lives, but also here in the build. However, I am inclined to a certain level of concern because of this subject matter, that it might indeed offend some. I apologize for this in advance, but I do not regret what will be said tonight, for this is a lesson that if no one else believes they should learn, we, myself and Brother Eli, are indeed learning. Today, we are going to talk about something that is not met with smiles or happiness or joy, at least not in the way that most people personify happiness and joy. Tonight, we're going to talk about death and the preparations in the physical plane for going away. The best way that we can create conversation about this, scholarly, is to ask these in question format. In elementary school, I was taught that there are 6 questions: what, who, what, when, where, why, and how. The answers that come out from these questions are not necessarily defined as they are divine. For divinity, for many people, do not satisfy a certain definition. What does it mean to prepare to die? We know that this is an inevitable event. It will occur, and yet this fact of life is one of the most controversial conversation to bring up at any table, because people think of death as something that is sad, depressing. But in all actuality, because of its inevitability, embracing it could indeed be helpful with our lives that we are still living. With this in mind, that we are in an existence that is finite, teaches us to appreciate those things. Brother Eli brought to my attention that some of the most beautiful occurrences in nature, they happen as that part of nature is transitioning. Leaves, for example, began to change color despite the weather, despite the idea that this should always happen at a certain month or a certain temperature. They happen all at a certain time. Most do not pay attention to the greens of the lush forest land. Oh, but when the cherry blossoms begin to shift and make themselves potent to our human eyes as they are falling from the trees, the bright reds and pinks and lilacs, the different shades of brown and red from trees as they fall. This autumn, which has a certain connection to certain human expression, the autumn of our lives when we are at a certain age. There are cultures who have practices well before the body actually does its completion of decomposition, preparations for this transition. As early as childhood in certain cultures. Another fact brought to the build in regards to royalty. Their caskets are already prepared well before they come to that point where they are no longer in the flesh. It is also because that preparation for that particular casket takes time and is striven for perfected manufacturing of said piece. Yet, most of American culture, if we can indeed call it that, does not prepare. To the point where most Americans do not have life insurance policies that are even contemplated until they are in a certain age, mostly over the age of 65 by statistics, in which they are given the most minimal benefits possible. Yet, the rich and wealthy have lawyers, have things set in place, will and testaments of where their belongings will be dispensed to certain family members and the carrying on of certain parts of their legend that will outlive them through their children and their children's children. Their wealth continues past their transition. In the East, there's a certain time of a person's life when they just decide to consume less food, to visit less areas outside of their own home, not because of a lack of health or ability, but of their own volition, as a means to cleanse themselves from the soils of the world, to make themselves clean. Yet these are things that are not talked about in your average American dinner table, which leads to why not? It is because, based upon certain research that I have done, it has not been instilled of planning for life. So why plan for death? The amount of unexpected pregnancies from the year 2013 to now have went up almost double, which has also resulted in more abortions of said unwanted pregnancies, which also leads to when Roe v. Wade was overturned and an uproar within certain communities that do not plan for children. In observing this, I have come to find that it is even difficult for me to think about where the things that I have done, my feats in this life, if they will be carried down into children or my children's children. But even on the physical plane, how to prepare my body. In the Hebrew culture, it is customary for the last 2 weeks of a person's life, when they are on their deathbed, to have certain foods that are meant for the sole purpose of cleansing the body. Certain herbs, definitely more amounts of water to cleanse the body. The Hebrews do this not just for a spiritual reason, but for a practical one as well, as the anatomy begins to dissipate into its transition. Your bodily fluids expel without your control. Autopsies have shown that in natural expiration of the body, even if it is as peaceful as sleep, feces begins to expel itself. At the final breath, there is a common sound that is made, like a rattling of all of the air that is left in your body, leaving it. Certain foul odors come from that. The germs that manifest into the bacteria that builds up over time. Your muscles are the last thing to go. Your muscles can still contract. They can still move the joints. There have been many stories, true accounts of those who work in morgues that can hear the sounds of bodies that were freshly placed in, still moving, certain gyrations from the blood still coursing through. And that breakdown takes much more time than most people contemplate. But of course, this is not talked about because it is thought of as visceral. And so instead, we have softer approaches towards this transition, poetic even. We will say that a person, when they were born, was their sunrise date, and when they leave was their sunset date on their funeral papers. However, in previous builds, we learned that the evening and the morning were the day. I will be a little bit more succinct and concise in my statement here. When we should prepare should totally depend upon how clean you wish to be for your God. If we are here to serve God, if we are here to serve a party of one of God, and we say that cleanliness is indeed next to godliness, there are certain things that in those times of recognition that we should do away from. Acidic properties within our food, so as to make sure that we are more than just metaphorically clean, but physically so. There is a list of herbs that the Hebrews take to do this. In Egypt, they believe in their many different approaches towards the afterlife that what you have here you can take indeed with you. There are certain sarcophagi that are placed in rooms inside of pyramids or other places, family homes, where they have their own room, where the body, the cadaver that is no longer active, has its own restroom, has its own evening meals prepared for them as offerings, as if they were gods. My question is, how are you preparing for your time to go? A day that has no number known to you, at least right now. I know how I'm starting to prepare. However, in my research objectively about these preparations, I have come to something subjective that I was not prepared to deal with. I am dealing with small bouts of regret, of things that I aspired to at a young age, but was given a glass shield with which to prepare myself to be capped at a certain level of achievement. A glass shield strong enough to not only hold a 4-year-old child, but a 42-year-old man. I say that candidly because if I cannot be true to thine self, how can I ask you to be true when you look in the mirror? And if I indeed can do this in front of all who are watching, then surely you can be that true to yourself. I have, as a minister and poet, been gifted with written words, of which had been tested by a certain individual who asked me to write her eulogy for her and then perform it in front of her family as if she had already gone. And it was so compelling that it brought forth more than tears. It actually brought forth joy. The "It's a Wonderful Life" paradigm happened in that room, and they learned to appreciate their lives that much more. I'll speak more on this soon, but I offer the floor to Brother Eli.
The means to an end will bring the end result, and also the desired end will bring the means to it. It's something about when you spoke about how they get prepared in those last 2 weeks, like what herbs to take and things of that nature. And I was looking for my Tibetan Book of the Dead, somewhere probably exactly behind me. I was also looking up how we prepare for birth. Let's think about that. When most people prepare for birth, look at all the work that is put into it. Some people even wait for certain constellations to appear in the sky. Others may wait to see certain stars in the sky. And others may wait for a certain year, while others will wait for financial stability, and others will wait because their health is not as good as they may want it to be. So think about that. Think about all the things that some of us will do to prepare for a child to be born. Some of us believe that it is important to wait and to educate yourself. We tell women to take certain vitamins, do certain exercises, and some of us may even take blood tests. We may look at family background, if certain families have certain diseases. So we do a lot when it comes to present ourselves in this physical world. There are so many books on the things you need to do before you get pregnant. The universities, the colleges, places talk about this. Even those who are not educated, they used to say certain things like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And while the womb was growing, the baby was growing in the womb, they will even look at the position of the child to say, uh-oh, if the child's up high, it might be a girl. If the child's down low, it might be a boy. So we do a lot of things when it comes to coming into the physical world. Notwithstanding the fact that we don't do half as much when it comes to return to the King, to return to God, to return to the afterlife, to return to whatever you may believe. Most people do not have any form of preparation. Again, when people are calm, this thing about this, you are going to take certain vitamins while the egg is growing in the womb. I mean, even myself, for example, we eliminated scary movies, horror films, sports, anything anything that deals with the other side, if you will. Because there was a perception, there was an idea, there was trial and error, there were concepts that we had to find out if they were true or not. The planning. So think about the planning that we need to take to go and see God. Can you imagine that despite the trials you experience while living in the physical world, you maintain your integrity, you maintain your dean, your essence to the highest level while being tried? I remember people ask me certain questions of, what is my religion? And I will tell them that, no, they will ask me if I'm a Christian. I tell them it's impossible for me to be a Christian. It is literally impossible for me to be a Christian. And I will go on to say that in my great great grandfather's will, who was a white man, a wealthy man who did not allow his half-breed son. I just start off there because on his headstone it said that him and others in my family created churches and schools. In American history, we know that blacks could not or were not allowed to read the Bible. So how is it possible that I was not allowed to read the Bible for 200 to 300 years? Now all of a sudden, I'm allowed to read that book. But my forefathers could not read that book. So how is it possible that I can be a Christian when they were not allowed to be Christians? That is something to really think about. We are wearing the skin and the blood and the DNA of those who were called savages. Historically, a lot of slaves came as Muslims. That is why you watch the movie Kunta Kinte, and Kunta Kinte was a Muslim. They want to call him Toby. So historically, most of us came as Muslims, and now we discovering some Jews. But anyway, it is impossible for me to be a Christian because, first of all, Christianity was not Jesus' religion. He didn't practice Christianity. Christianity is a new word. Christianity, I think there are some good things to say about Christianity, like Christ, be Christ-like, some would like to say. But me personally, I cannot be a Christian. It's impossible for me to be a Christian. Even when we look at some of those who live in Ethiopia Orthodox Christians. The religion of Christ was Judaism. He didn't bring a religion as a name. In fact, no one named the religion until Prophet Muhammad, because the Quran finally gave a name to a particular practice. People just made up the name Judaism because of Judah. But Abraham was not Jewish because that was his son's name. Why would I name my religious practice to a son from a son's name? It's kind of backwards. Adam was not Jewish. So you have some problems when it comes to a culture that you live in compared to a name that we like to label on the more ancient culture. So for others, they can call themselves Christians. But when it comes to me, I cannot. God said in the Bible that he is not an author of confusion, and there are approximately
Brother Eli, you have muted yourself.
yes.
Mm.
Thank you, brother. I think there are about 40 to 50 some thousand denominations in Christianity. Um, so I'm going to look at that. How many denominations in Christianity? So globally, there are approximately 45,000 denominations. Okay, it says that if you Google it, it says Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Baptist, Apostolic, Methodist. It says the list goes on. Estimation shows there are more than 200 Christian denominations in the U.S. and a staggering 45,000 denominations. So people ask me, if I'm not a Christian, what am I? I said, well, I've been studying the concept of this God for a very long time. So the only thing that I can recognize as what I will call myself is to be a servant, because something serves something else. Everything that exists serves something else. We exist because everything else exists. So that is the only title. And I also remember back in the 80s when new family members will become Jehovah Witness and how they will separate themselves from the people they grew up with. Okay. So back to the death concept. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about what can I do to get prepared to go see the King, to go see God, to go see Abba, to go see Father, or some say to go see Mother, or some will say our ancestors. Now think about that. If we are going to see others who we may look up to like ancestors, can you imagine going back being a Negro? Can you imagine? Now, again, you have a right, because remember, we live and let live. But from my perspective, and I am speaking, I cannot imagine going back to see the king or ancestors who I look up to as a Negro, as a savage. Earlier podcasts or meetings, we spoke about what is a savage, right? So A savage is, I'm looking at it right now. A savage is fierce, violent, and uncontrolled. It says of an animal or force of nature. So I am not trying to be undomesticated, a savage, a brutal or vicious person as a noun. So you go back to your loved ones with your memories, with your actions. And can you imagine inspiring yourself to really get your act together according to your standards? So, my standards, for some reason, I don't know why, I think to be more simple, to be more upright, to be more calm, to be more present, to be more giving to myself because I gave to the world for an extensive amount of time, to be giving towards nature. I'm going to give you this example to show how low we are as humans. Low meaning that when I call you a low life from me is not like how you perceive, because when you call some people, oh man, you're ignorant, they will get frustrated because in their mind, they think they're calling them a name, but the word ignorant is just lack of knowledge of a subject. So when I'm calling those out there a low life is someone that brings your energy force down. You can be going to work on high on life. You listen to your favorite song, or you may have discovered a new song, and that new song just got your spirits high. You feel light. And then you go to work or you go to this environment and people bring your energy low and you start actually feeling heavy in your heart and even on your shoulders. So being a low life, you bring people down. You don't bring them up. And I think is when you talked about the Morris science people, they said we are supposed to lift up fallen humanity. So back to my perspective when it comes to what should I do to go see the king? Or what can I try to do to perfect what I perceive as an older Eli? I spoke with Brother Michael the other day, and I remember watching a gentleman for my entire life who was just extremely handsome, extremely refined, and extremely consistent with his refinement and him being handsome. It is Bob Barker on the Wheel of, was it the Wheel of Fortune, brother?
Was The Price is Right.
Price is Right. Okay. The Price is Right. Even think of that name, The Price is Right. Now, I want you to think about this. Um, let's look at two people. Let's look at Bob Barker and let's look at the other guy who was on what's the Steve Harvey show where he be talking to people and asking them questions. What's that family show called, brother? He be on TV, ask them question. They gotta push a button, and then they
Family Feud.
Family Feud. Who was that white guy on Family Feud used to kiss everybody in the 70s?
Oh, wow. The 70s
What was his
version.
name? He used to just
Let me
kiss
find
everybody.
him. Let me find him. I must find that name.
Why, brother Michael, find this man? This guy will kiss everybody, and he would just have this type of energy about himself. Not necessarily a clean energy like Bob Barker, but it was a more type of more of a dirty type of energy.
Richard Dawson is his name.
Richard Dawson. Now, if you do not believe me, you are grown and I am grown. Please take your grown eyes and your grown ears and watch Richard Dawkins or Dawson in the 70s kissing everybody, how he talked and even how he moved. And then go watch the other gentleman. He
Mm,
had perfect posture. The posture was just like the thin microphone that he had. It just his whole being was upright. His shoes on up. Just thought about that. So myself, I have failed multiple times. So I am trying to even get to the point that my diction is like Brother Michael's, is slower, is at a certain pace, and my tone and things of that nature, because I can get out of control. So I want to be someone that I think is a good gentleman. I want to look a certain way. I want to have a type of handsomeness about me. I don't know if that's the word. I want to have a vibrant regalness on my presence. I want to be like certain people I saw when I was younger. I walked into rooms of senior citizens who had all white hair, and the room was just vibrant of beauty. They were extremely attractive and old. Their skin was vibrant. I have seen some amazing beings. Now, on the flip side, you got other people, you walk in their room and it's just, stinky and they're dirty and, unkept. All about them is just opposite of what they would want to present themselves if a special loved one was coming to visit them when they were younger. Because some people, they can be dirty like a mug. A mug. I don't know why I say a mug. But they can be dirty, but when they know somebody coming, the house is immaculate. And I always challenge those type of people. I said, why you gonna make your house immaculate for someone else, but not yourself? Because all of you know how it feels to walk into a clean home. So do it for yourself. Walk in like, oh, it feels good. Just lay down in a clean home. So dying, I would like to hear more about what herbs that the Jews use, because I am learning that some group of people, and you can do the investigation on your own, of course. You don't believe me, I'm just using words. But for some reason, when these European Jews specifically, that's what I'm saying, use words, European Jews, they become successful no matter where they move to. They're God. God have made these people some vagabonds. They are just like nomads to prove his point to humans. When these little group of people, small numbers, when they start living their custom and traditions, they are become blessed in a society they didn't originate in. And black people like to say, well, white people got a 40-year start. And they have pictures of a white man running and then a black person with a chain around his, with a ball around his ankle. But look at these Jews. These Jews can go anywhere, give them a few 30, 40, 50 years, and they're on top of the society. So we are learning that was lost because we taught them when they were savages in the Caucasus Mountains as cavemen and women, when they lost all levels of dignity, when we denied them certain things for 2,000 years. So they are using something that we gave them when we were at a higher state. And those few who are very disciplined with those things, like eating certain foods at certain times and listen, we are evidence based, and it is obvious that they know something, right? Because even their criminals rule countries, and their criminals get them in trouble, and that's how you get a holocaust, because of their criminals. So they have the ring like the Lord of the Rings. So we are learning on our own terms to look at certain things. Even the Muslims, they pray 5 times a day and have certain restrictions. And then when you walk to their countries, they have their regular sidewalks are made out of marble. We see the evidence of being consistent with nature. They don't say, oh, we're going to pray 5 times a day today and do not do it tomorrow. Or we're going to switch up the times. No, only low lives do stuff like that. Remember what a low life is. Because look at the Muslims and the Jews, the ones who practice. I mean, think about it. God loved these people so much that for some reason they was pooping and eating and partying on top of oil. That means they had black gold. God was like, look, you're blessed. You don't even know how much blessed you are because they were there for 1,000 years before we needed oil. But these people will kill you for changing the Quran. That's why they say you must read the Arabic if you really want to know the Quran. They don't say, I mean, so, and then the children, I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I want to see, just want to be blessed. And these people, they do not change. They don't say, we're going to do Ramadan. They follow the moon. These people consistent. When you look at the average black Christian, they change up stuff. We want to do Easter on this day because we want to keep it on the weekend. I mean, these people are so out of line. I mean, it's so sickening. It is so sickening. It is sickening. And when you look at America, America is a mess when it comes to where you're trying to go. So think about it. Think about the people who says, "Look, I'm not going to change my tradition. Even these traditions, we were practicing these traditions before the idea or the concept of an American. There was no an American country before Judaism and Islam and other religious practices. So they're not going to come. Even when you look at other cultures, when they come to America, they bring their food and they bring their culture. And they sit in America for a couple years. And then next thing you know, you see a Chinatown inside of America. But you look at us, we flip and change, and then we want to ask God why is happening to us. We worry about a weekend, a Monday, Tuesday. No. When the people break their little Sabbath, they don't say, well, this is Monday or Friday. They don't say that. They look for 3 stars because the heavens are consistent. They don't give a hoot about you. They don't give a hoot about the earth. They're going to show themselves. And the Muslims look at the moon. They do the Ramadan according to the sights of when they see the moon. These people are in alignment with the universe, with our solar system. They following the stars. How you gonna beat a people who get their energy from the stars? Let me prove my point. But let me give you understanding what I mean by that. We have discovered certain energies will hit the earth to change the foliage of the earth. Like we see new growth in our leaves, spring. We see little chicken. We see something that change. We see change. We see animals start having intercourse. We see physical change, but we cannot physically see the energy that's making these animals and plant life change. There's an energy that they follow. Even when the birds, they don't have books, they start flying towards the south. So there's an unseen force, an antenna or a frequency that is sent to the earth to tell this particular location to change. So it's not local. So they are in alignment with something that is not local. They are in alignment with a frequency that tell the planet to move. Because the planet spins and then it spins around the sun. And then it tilts while it's spinning. So these are forces that's telling the whole planet to move and do. So when you are in a religion, they are not talking about, oh, it's a Friday, it's a Monday necessarily. They look according to the alignment of stars, like the birth of Christ, according to legend, religion, Christianity. So when we are aligning our practices with that, because think about it, Brother Michael, you know, when a person dies, there's a process. And can you imagine taking certain herbs? Because we eat herbs for our organs. We even smell herbs that make us feel better. Because I remember in Ohio, we can smell when someone is sick. It's like a little odor, like a little funk. You say, oh, you must get in the cold. The coldest must be coming. So an unseen force is coming. So think about it. When you have herbs and you take out their essence and you make oils with them and you put the oils on you, that is something else working with herbs. So it's many layers. So let me close off on this part and let Brother Mike go more into what he want to go into. But I just want to remember, and I hope we all remember that there are a right way to live. Some people says, well, there's no book on being a mother. Come on, man. This is the dumbest thing. There's no book. There's a book on everything. You just don't want to read it, or you're too rebellious to follow it. But you have societies that's not going through the things we're going through because they are following the unseen forces of nature. Because when you flowing with a stream, it propels you compared to going against a stream. It reflects you. So I'll stop right there, Brother Michael.
It reflects you. What a perfect utterance in this place. It reflects you. Muslims, before going to pray, because they respect their God and love their God so much, they refuse to pray to Allah unclean. You have to take a bath. You have to scrape every single filament of dirt, any figment of body imperfections, the best that you can. You must shave your nails a certain way. You must have a certain amount of cleansing that is done on the face, that is done through the nose, to make sure that the vessel is clear to receive the message symbiotically as you are giving your praise and your servitude to God. I want you to just kind of pin that on the board right there. On the other end of the board in your mind, I want you to think about people who bungee jump, who skydive, who get in cars that have a high octane and accelerate in this vehicle to speeds that are dangerous to say the least, for sake of the thrill of adrenaline rushing through their body, the endorphins kicking through their system. Pin that on the other side of the board. And then I want you to draw these two dynamics together. What are they doing that is the same? They are living like they're dying. There's an old country song called Live Like You're Dying. The chorus goes something along the lines of, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I went to these different lengths to experience the highest level of my ability, even if it causes fear, so that I do not regret not trying. That is, in some parts of the American culture, the way that they live like they're dying. The bucket list gets done at earlier and earlier ages. Muslims, they prepare their bodies in the living physical days, when going to prayer, when in their fasts, in much the same way a cadaver is prepared for a funeral. They are cleaned. Their fingernails are cleaned, they're shaved a certain way. But instead of waiting until post-mortem for this to be performed by someone else, they supplicate themselves to the task to show that they will not go to their God unclean. There are some people who believe that they are, quotation marks, woke, believe that they are gods, and yet refuse to do anything of the sort, because their idea of God is having control over everything. And they can control their laziness in the same regard. Almost like some of the lesser Greco-Roman gods who were of full bellies and full of certain things that other cultures would call sins, but that made them a god. The extremities of cleanliness being next to godliness, the extremities of the highest level of your physical ability while in this life being achieved, your highest capacity in the discipline that it takes to acquire such capacities. This is living like you're dying. And however, there are some who are the walking dead, who are living like they are dying in a totally different way. They do nothing. They think of very neutral beliefs, or very detrimental, self-detrimental beliefs, to expire themselves early. Their definition of living like they're dying is imbibery of alcohol, the taking in of certain drugs. They will even go to the point of saying that you are closer to God when taking in these drugs because it takes your consciousness away from the densities of this world. I am not here to argue that, but what I am here to say is that I have a certain version of living like I'm dying and seeing the people that I approach and embrace every day as another one healed in part by my hands, so that that may be the legacy that I pass down to people who are not even of my blood lineage. At my office, we write up patients of the month that are literally immortalized by way of the internet for their great achievements in achieving a higher capacity of their physical bodies, of their anatomy, of their posture, of being able to throw away blood pressure medications, diabetic medications, and instead take in such herbs that are in question in regards to Hebrew are the exact same herbs that are eaten at Passover or Pesach. I will read them. Hazaret, or lettuce. Uleshim, or endive and chicory. Tamacha, havina, which is possibly the same type of herbs that are like oregano made into an oil. And maror, which is thistle. Imagine, instead of waiting for the last 2 weeks, of which it's been calculated by a doctor who has exhausted his own knowledge to the sustaining of your life, that instead of the last meal of murderers who are placed at the electric chair, which are high in fats and carbs, you took in bitter herbs instead. Instead of waiting until those last 2 weeks, what would happen with your body if you took 2 years, a time out of these 2 years, to dedicate towards taking care of the cleansing of your body? Or the last 10 years or 20 years, placing more plant life into your system versus flesh and blood. Imagine, instead of purchasing a lottery ticket at a gamble of saying that if you win this particular combination of numbers, that you'd be able to buy all of these extremities of inanimate objects and live like a king or god. You took the humility and saw the things that you have and cherished them as if that article of clothing were what you would wear in the grave. Being distinguished is what I am going towards. For there are many men who only own one suit that they wear to other people's funerals. But if you but took a chance and changed your wardrobe once you got more salt than pepper in your facial hair to be more distinguished, how much more the world would embrace you as a distinguished gentleman. I am one that has been put to the test of clothes making the man, for the moment that I walk outside wearing my ministerial garments, I am treated as such by strangers without ever uttering a word or title or my name. Insurance policies, instead of those lottery tickets, would be much more beneficial. You can create a life insurance policy as early as the day you were born by your parents. Whole life and term life insurance policies in combination, most beneficial, term being something that you, while you're living, can take back from and invest within yourself to create a legacy. And yet, some believe that it is just a pine box or thrown into ashes. It's much more than that. Because that energy that we know from science cannot be destroyed, is only transformed and transmogrified and transferred to others, all others, not just human, but in the ethers, if you're indeed worthy by your God and your love for your God. Or even if you have the unfinished business due to certain regrets, due to leaving this world much too soon. Dare I say it, to be a jinn or a ghost, a haunting of guilt. Even then, finding cleanliness of some sort could result in resolve. There are many books of the dead. There are many books of the living. There are many gospels. But I believe that the biggest approach towards living like you are dying is to treat your life as a gospel, as a good news. Not just bullet points of achievements, but a report card of sorts for your God. Brother Eli sent me a movie clip from a film entitled Pan's Labyrinth. It featured in this scene a little girl who sacrificed herself to save someone else. And once her body in the physical frame was on its way out of consciousness, she approached what appeared to be a huge courtroom slash arena of multitudes of beings. And she was greeted as royalty, as a means of saying she did her job well done, and was met with standing ovation for her sacrifice. It does not take a metaphysician, it does not take a scientist to understand in your reflection. Oh, Brother Eli, thank you for that. In the reflection, you thinking back of everything you have done, if you are worthy. I said earlier that I deal with bouts of regret from time to time due to a glass shield that has capped my capacity. The truth of the matter is, it is no glass shield. It's a mirror that can be easily broken, that something in me chooses to instill as if it itself, the limitation, were a religion. I say this to you. Listen carefully. If there is anything in this world that places a governing onto your ability to reach the highest capacity of compassion in this life, I am telling you to take the dirtiness of your hands, ball them into the tightest fist you can clasp, and strike repeatedly upon that mirror. Not for the superstition of 7 years bad luck, but knowing that on the other side, for double-sided mirrors hide interrogations. Upon breaking said mirror, you will ascend to become a greater human being. And if you dare to, with discipline, you will please God. I am thankful for the energy that we have here in this sacred space that keeps me warm even in these cold nights. For sometimes that burning bush is something I place my hands upon to keep warm. If not for that burning bush, I'd surely die way too soon. My preparations are not for me. They are for my children and their children's children. They are for the people who have found healing in part by my own hands as a vessel from God to them. My only prayer when I go, when I have the same bitter herbs that I take periodically for the last 10 years and will continue to do so to remain clean, as a discipline, as a normalcy that will not shock my body, but will be commonplace. That once I leave, that the only thing that will smell of my body will be herbs of oregano, and maybe even a hint of roses, of which I'll never be able to smell, but have been placed in me to intravenously bleed them out from my heart to the organs of my body to do the good work. Ever since I was 7 years old, I had a dream of dying. It was a poetic dream of sorts, and it changes as I get older because of the depiction. As a child, you don't know many people, but my depiction of death was to crawl as a child, kind of like the evolution story as we see the tadpole turn into a lizard, jump out of the water and grow legs and evolve into a man. As a child, growing as I am walking forward and going from crawling on my knees to standing and walking to running full bore onto a trampoline, jumping up, ascending to the highest that I thought were the heavens where I touched them, and falling into a box, accompanied by all of the people that I've ever known. I used to wake up in cold sweats after having that dream. The last time that that dream came to me was 2 days ago on a Thursday night, Friday morning, upon which the contemplation afterwards were how many moons do we have versus the sun? I guess what I'm trying to say to you tonight is I do not fear death. I have feared life for quite some time. I have allowed a shield of my own mind to stop me from being a better servant to God. And the realization of this is the revelation that is needed to perform my own exodus from my own bondage to make a freedom within myself. And the only question that I have left is, who is coming with me? Who dares and does the mighty dream of living like they're dying, gracefully and falling like those leaves that change the color even in the autumn of their life, so slow it looks like they're flying? Who is coming with me?
Brother Mike, I like to just think about, I remember when I was younger, I didn't quite understand when I saw old people sitting in a chair, just sitting in the sun, not saying a word, and they was just sitting there. There's a gentleman, I think he's going to turn 100, and they just put him out there directly in the sun, and he just sits there. As you get older, you rediscover yourself over and over and over again, the challenges, and you ask like, well, why is this going on? You know, so you feel aging, you feel it, and there are again these unseen energies, these unseen forces, that you have to discover. Like, why is this going on? Just as when you were growing up and you woke up a teenager, your voice was deeper, you had more strength. So it's like the thinning of the line. It's like the moving into silence. You know, um, so it's just the- hopefully you can figure it out. Why are these things happening? Um, so even like earlier, it's like I can't maintain a conscious state, but I can listen to in the in between conscious and unconscious state. It's like it's being forced upon me, and I'd be like, you know, I go with the flow for a second, I'm like, well, why does this exist? So in real time, we see stuff, changing, so it's again, death is moving into the night, even though the night is bright. And it's so important for some of us to try to get this thing right. And I think some of us who are diligent enough will receive the answers because e- just think about it. If reincarnation is real, hopefully what we do this time around will benefit us in the future. Because they said that no effort is not um, seen or respected. Everything is seen and respected. Um, so it's so much to learn, but I believe it's worth it because I, even at this very moment, would not give what they consider my worst enemy my life experiences. Yes, I've seen people and heard people says I wouldn't change a thing. Listen, hip hip hooray for you. But I'm not following that. I'm not the one to just because someone said it that I should do the same thing. I don't even know who made that up. And most of the time, those were criminals. Like you got mob bosses in movies, just degenerate humans who do not tell the full truth. Um, so no, I am shocked that I had this type of life. To be honest, it's like even now, more now than in the past because like what is going on? I thought if I did 100 push-ups a day that I get more strength. But I'm doing 100 push-ups a day and I'm losing strength. It's like this weird warped twilight zone existence. No, cuz I do remember not knowing the end or being near the end. But like Brother Michael said, when someone is dying, they lose certain faculties, like urination and pooping and stuff. And it changed before you die. And that's why they have grown pampers, man. There's a lot of things that people don't talk about when it comes to aging and the process of dying. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a 2 week thing. I would say that from 50 on, I think when you 50, especially 52, from 50 or 52 on, there's a point of no return, even with the certain lifestyle changes. You'll get better and do things better than those who did not um, make these changes in their lives. But it's still um, a energy, a unseen energy that your antenna is tuning into. I love how I just put it that way because when you are in a generation like you have these young people, for some reason, I was at a shoe store today. For some reason, they are so infatuated with a shoe that came out in 1984. I looking around these shoe stores and in my and they're the ugly ones. I mean, I really didn't wear those type of Jordans when I was younger. They had the different type. Those are like the Bobo shoes. You know, the children like those $200 Bobo shoes, and they are plain. They get the all white, and I'm like, when I'm looking like, what frequency is that? Because I remember older people discussing what my generation was doing in the past. Um, and I think that is a process of death. Of dying. When you see the new frequency do things that your frequency do not agree with. Like I remember when I was younger, you had people, females, they wore stockings and had dresses down to their ankles. So when my generation came around, it was different and we had different frequencies. We didn't see nothing wrong with a higher skirt. They was like, "Oh man, this is crazy." Now I'm about 50 and these young people are crazy. But amongst their peers, they okay. Like it was I think somebody got in yeah, it was a brother online. I think he got into a physical altercation with his nephew. And he was explaining that his nephew had these earrings on with hoops and like a bell or something on it. And it escalated their conversation. Um, and they got into a physical altercation. I remember the first person that wore because when I was growing up, you could only wear a ring in like the left ear. Otherwise, you were considered like homosexual if you had it in the right ear. I don't know
Yeah.
who made that up, but we followed it. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when Michael Jordan wore a jingling ear in the left ear. Go ahead, brother Mike. Go ahead. Go ahead. Come on in.
No, I'm just I wanted to make sure that my laughter was captured because I am right there with you, brother. I remember
Let's
all
think
of
about that.
that.
Let's just conversate. Think about that.
Yeah.
Who passed these things on to us? I mean, who? It's like um Abraham Lincoln was a good old man. He jumped out the
And the
window with
window
his
was
in his
his
hand.
hand.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
who told?
excuse me,
And I
lady. Let's
and I
do my
remember a few
duty.
years ago,
Please turn
brother.
around so I can get some booty.
Yeah, I
I
remember.
remember that stuff. Oh
Listen, I
my
remember.
gosh.
Listen, brother. I learned that in L.A. I heard that in Ohio. And who is this Johnny Appleseed going around different city whispering to young people's ears and telling them these things? And who passing these things down? I haven't found them yet.
It's not a specific person. It's just a specific energy, just as you were saying. It's an
Mhm.
energy. And that is why it is so important for us to articulate.
Our traditions.
Yes, yes, it is so important because that gives it a chance for it to transfer and revitalize within culture. It gives it that chance because all of a sudden now, there are more and more people who are starting to think twice about what they are wearing when they're in public. At least here in North Carolina, I saw a person in a grocery store wearing a three-piece suit, and you would have swore that he was a lawyer, that he was someone that was of high order. He was just a regular, average Joe, as you say, just doing his shopping. And because I am not necessarily a person to bridle my tongue, though I do speak as eloquently as I can, I take every chance to converse. I asked him what he did for a living. He said he retired early, and the only attire that he wears are suits. You will always see him in a suit. And upon asking why are they not, don't you want to wear something that's more comfortable? And he says, this is comfortable. What kids these days wearing are quite uncomfortable. The sagging of the pants is quite uncomfortable. But to be distinguished and to find comfort in that builds a confidence, a certain aura. When you walk into a room, it's the same energy. That's a legacy without even speaking a word.
Brother Michael, let me add this in. I remember we used to have to get dressed in suits to eat dinner at home. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, brother, think about it. Look how we just trashed such honorable things, such regalness. Because remember, I told you, I've just been very consistent making my bed. I'm excited. And
Mhm.
my little cot thing right over there, and I walk in. There is an effect, just like when people clean up for strangers to come visit, and if you clean up for yourself, or
Yes.
or or as a tourist, I love clean sheets. Like when I lay in the clean sheets and just you
Mhm.
know, man. But just think about that. We wore suits. I remember my mom used to make me wear a three-piece suit when I got on an airplane. But those are because even back in the 30s and 20s, you see the videos, they wore suits doing construction work. They wore suits everywhere. They were regal everywhere, bro. I just thought about that.
Yes. Regality was not an occasion, it was a way of life. If we think about ancient Kemet, like Egypt, their regality was a way of life. There wasn't a such thing as what we consider casual now. There was a certain attire for certain times of the day. I remember my mother saying to prepare for supper, and that meant to get clean because you were not approaching the table unclean, and you had certain clothing that you would wear when you ate. When you came in from school, take those outside clothes off. These are things that are, if we do not articulate them, however we can, they will go extinct because that energy is being locked in another glass shield, placed inside of a jar so it's not heard, it's not uttered. I'll give you another example. I heard a person I heard a person call another person at a gas station a jive turkey. Now, when is the last time you ever heard the term jive turkey? These are all vibrations. These are all vibrations. And if you treat your body as an instrument of these vibrations, just like any instrument, they have to be clean. There's a reason why Trumpets, saxophones are made of brass. Brass is antifungal, antimicrobial, antibacterial. By design, they don't need as much cleaning as other materials. My doctor's office, all of the knobs are brass. There's certain elements. If we're calling ourselves all of the elements in being an earth, certain elements that represent higher vibrations. Copper represents a higher vibration. It literally is used in coils to generate electricity. And there's a reason why there are people who wear copper, people who wear certain calibers of gold. The density of them keep them grounded and keep certain energies away from them. This is all a game of energy. And if we're able to detach away from negative energy, do you know how much easier it will be to remain clean? You take your average golden ring. You were talking about the Lord of the Rings and the Elden Ring. And a rapper desecrates it by putting whatever images that are the thing of the day on these pieces of jewelry. They should be taken as a way to keep cleanliness. But it will attract the energy that they engraved upon it. You'll have a person who will call any and everyone anything other than a child of God, but they'll wear Jesus pieces upon their chest. These are blasphemies because your body being a temple, we have to take this literally. I say it's a game because it's fun to understand, to learn these things at this age. You say, I found one of those rules. I remember this tradition. I will reinstill it. I know the importance of it now with these eyes versus the ones that I had when I was younger. I caught it. That's when it's fun to us. But no day is promised to us. Our autumn, our winter could come before our leaves ever fall. And that is why it's important to always stay prepared. Was it not James Brown who said, if I stay ready, I ain't got to get ready? I am in the business of staying ready. I'm in the business of staying ready. Bullet points on how to do that. Cleanness of your organs by way of fasting and taking in more plants than anything else to keep your insides clean. Certain herbs, when you ingest them after a certain amount of time, you do not smell the death and the sickness that collects upon in the inside of the body and permeates throughout. Something as simple as making your bed every night. Have we not heard the saying, you made your bed, now lie in it? We say that about life, but we need to take all of these things very literally as well. These are ways that we find the clues of how to be a better human being. That's when we have the revelations, because we've heard the words, but we connect them together in ways that put more meaning in them than we did when they were told to us by our parents. We own it for ourselves. And in that owning of it for ourselves, we adorn it on ourselves. And we get to look at ourselves with that reflection in that mirror. And without feeling selfish, can be proud of ourselves in that moment and be ready for anything. Because even if I leave that very day, I leave representing something as close as I can to greatness as possible. And dare I say it, those good deeds will outlive me many times over. Brother Eli mentioned what other people say in regards to if they could go through their life all over again, they wouldn't change a thing. And he did more than just beg to differ. But I say this, the testimony of you is not just for you. Your testimony is the catalyst for other testimonies. We do not know how many lives we have saved by being clean. We just know now, if never before, that we did indeed save some. Because if we continue to reiterate that I exist because everything else exists, that continues to go up the scale. There are some people that would not be here on this planet if you did not exist in the way that you do. And that is why you are just as important as the reflection in your mirror. To look deep into your own pupils of your eyes until the whites of those slowly disappear and the sclerae of your lens shows nothing more than your soul. That is a truth that we have to deal with alone. And I would rather deal with that alone, knowing that I did my absolute best without any reservation. What travesty it would be in heaven of my mind to be told, job well done, while I hid some of my uncleanliness underneath a rug. I'd feel cheated. I'd feel as the cheater of this game of life, to the point where I beg the gods to bring me down here again to do everything differently. Years before we even had what we are calling today as the build, Brother Eli, I remember a time when you said, when I ascend, I am not coming back here. I'm going to stay up there. I don't know how heavy a star is. I'm pretty sure I can look it up and find one in the midst of a darkness that has enough strength to hold them all up there. But I want to be light. We need to continue to be light.
I'm angry that I don't have my pen because I'm starting taking notes. And that's was why I was looking that way, because you were saying some things I found, because I'm gonna start eating something more distasteful, like just raw foods, right? And guess what popped into my mind a few seconds ago?
Hmm.
I hope that I never say anything about my body. I think that's wrong. I found a new trigger word that may support my efforts.
Hmm.
Instead of calling my body, call it a temple.
Yes.
And it triggers something every time I hear stuff. I'm about to feed my temple. Instead of saying I'm about to feed myself or feed my body, then I want to go eat a donut. But if I'm going to say I'm gonna feed my temple, then I don't think I'll mind eating something that will keep the temple clean. So I don't think I'm gonna say my body anymore. I'm gonna call it a temple because it triggers something in my consciousness that I need to do right by it instead of
Yes.
doing wrong by it.
Hmm.
And then when you said make your bed, now lie in it. And I thought about it. See, we always got to go to the knuckleheads, right? What about those who make their beds properly? They can go lie in their beds too because they
Yes.
took the effort to make their beds properly. So
Yes.
they can go lie down in their beds as well. It doesn't always have to be to those. They already got the whole world, you
Hmm.
know. But being in alignment, brother, you know, because think about that type of liberation, because we always say, you know, we don't know what tomorrow's going to be. I actually believe there is a way to know these things. I don't think I don't think existence made it that way, because even some people know, like bison, when a storm is coming. So they don't have to feel destruction because they were pre-warned. The lull before the storm.
Hmm.
So I think there are ways that we can live a particular life that we know when calamity gonna come, and then we divert the calamity because we know it. I mean, think of the concept of the weatherman. The weatherman is educating on what storms are coming from a more savage way because we use technology.
Hmm.
But like birds know how to fly to the south when the seasons change.
Yeah.
Because the weatherman say possibly slight and chance. Let you know, look, you need to walk outside and see how the day is going to be
For
for, for
yourself.
yourself.
Yes. Yes.
So I think again, I'm gonna say, well, I'm about to go feed my temple, even in my conscience, in my own in my mind, because when I used to tell people don't stop smoking, but when you pick up that cigarette, gently tell yourself that you want to stop smoking, and each time you do it, I think you build up a neural connection or some frequency in your mind, and eventually that will help you to want to stop smoking. So every time I eat this nasty food that I'm about to start eating, because I love it. I'm honest. I'm gonna say, well, I'm feeding my temple. And again, even as I say it, I'm more willing because it gives a reason why I'm taking in such nasty foods. Because
Hmm.
I am feeding my temple. I am not feeding myself.
Yes.
Man, so that's why again I need to have my pen, because even last week you was mentioning things and we was conversating over things and I didn't write them down. And
Mm.
that's foolish to lose bricks. That's
Mm.
foolish. So yeah.
Ah, but we come in part in energy from a people who were compelled by oppression to build bricks without straw.
Mm,
There's many levels to that. We have books to remind ourselves that we are the book. We are the only species that has to read on being better versions of ourselves in order to become it. And even then, most don't choose. Social Darwinism has become the new woke. We watch the calamity of other human beings as entertainment. This is a desecration to the temple. These are temples. The seat of heaven is thought to be the pineal gland itself. I witnessed via the internet an individual who was shot in the head at point blank range with a shotgun, and he was still alive. This part of his face looked as if it was erased with a rubber eraser. He is in the medical miracle record alongside a woman who was mauled by her pet monkey with the same injury. How were they able to survive? Because the back of their brain, which is adjacent to the seat of heaven, the pineal gland, stayed intact. The front of the brain and the back of the brain are different. This holds all function. Parts of this and this hold emotion and memory. If we fully grasp the concept of being a temple, of having a seat for which we shall sit and ponder and alter our vessels with the proper tools, knowing how to clean the temple, then we are due a service. Just like preaching in a church. The gospel according to Eli. The gospel according to Tr1. The good news is we're getting this now, and we are still here to experiment with our findings, to take the hypothesis towards the materials with the purpose and certain procedures, despite limitations, to render result. It is a project worth much more than anything that distracts or disrupts the temple. And in the holiest of holies, of which all tabernacles have, of which in certain cultures has a smaller door, which is made with the purpose of you entering it on your knees, almost as if you are in prayer, in humility, in our most humblest moment. If we can say that that part of us is clean, then God is welcome in. And then we can die happy that we've achieved something. We achieved the highest service, the greatest success, inshallah. It is what I pray for all of us. But even though there will be some, there will be many, there will be masses, there will be multitudes who think otherwise, I, the candle, in the midst of this darkness, can't complain. For the candle cannot complain against the darkness and the harshness. It instead emits itself, then admits to itself that it is everything that it needed. It is
The light.
the light, and we are that light. We will not blow this candle away from us. We will take it in to our temples. And as we do so together, we take it in and we show beyond the shadow of a doubt that we are not harmed. Many, many blessings be upon all who have witnessed the revelations that we have shared together. And may we continue to build the bricks of our temple. Blessings.